as a traveling musician growing up in the Caribbean, I would hear stories of all these great musicians coming in to perform and never really getting to interact with them. And so I'm doing my part to change that model so that young musicians can have a chance to interact, exchange, network with professionals, so that they have the opportunities to not only see what it's like and meet people, but hopefully then get a little more inspired to push through to get into a career in the performing arts, because we need more performing artists coming out of the Caribbean. And that's the goal. The goal is to train the next generation of musicians and also to train the next generation of audiences for the Caribbean. And so that's the goal of the project, and we've been very generously supported so far by the U.S. Embassy Department of State. The U.S. Embassy Public Affairs Office, which is the arm of the State Department, and as well as people like Republic Bank, Sagicor has been helpful in many different, TSTT, the Blink Foundation, the Massey Foundation, Calabash Foundation for the Arts. There are many different Caribbean Airlines, of course, and Hilton Hotel, and there have been many different companies that have come together, HADCO, in Trinidad and Tobago specifically, to help us get this ball rolling of making sure that young people get to see live music, because so many people hear it, so many kids hear it on the speakers, and they might watch a music video on YouTube, but you might watch a music video on YouTube and you don't actually see how the music happens. Like, you go in the kitchen, you can watch somebody cook food, and you can see them cut the onions, cut the garlic up, you can see them cut the tomato, you can see them season the meat, and then you see them throw it in the pot, and then you taste the food. But with respect to music, all people normally get to do is taste the food. And so a lot of times they don't get to see what the process is to understand and then appreciate it. So it's about putting that vision into people's eyes so that they can see what it takes to play an instrument, what the magic that happens from that, the magic from even lighting a stage, the magic from somebody dancing to music. Basically, our goal is to put it in front of them so that they can then see something that they haven't seen, that they might then grasp onto and go into, maybe find a career in it.
On the prison side, you said you're interested in that. So we just had a fire in the Georgetown prison last night, and so there's lots of discussion on reform and different things for prisoners. And I know in Trinidad there's a prison in the heart of Port of Spain also. So the entire Georgetown prison burned to the ground.
Wow.
So what would that look like working with the prison population? What would be the goal? Is it just to bring music, or is there actually training for prisoners maybe to have a career in music?
Well, they already have musicians, like they already have prison bands, like they already have groups inside of the prison that play music, and not just the officers, like actual inmates as well. And you go up the Caribbean, like you go to Jamaica, there's a studio, there's a radio station all inside the prison, recording studio, and there's a recording studio and a radio station inside the prison that operates from inside the prison. Like, I don't know if you know Jack Hero, but a lot of his stuff was recorded and broadcast from there. And so I like that model. As I'm getting a little bit older, I try to see the need to take music to as many people as possible, and specifically the people who wouldn't be able to just come find us and come hear us. So if somebody has a disability of whatever sort, to keep them from coming to hear us, we'll find a way to get to them, to bring the music to them. Because I look at the program Doctors Without Borders, and I think of Musicians Without Borders as a way of just taking, music. We see music as a form of medicine. And people come up to us after shows all the time, and you see that they feel better. You see that their week just got a little bit better. The stress just left a little bit. And so it shouldn't be limited to those who could buy the tickets. It shouldn't be limited to those who can drive to the concert. It shouldn't be limited to, it should be available to everybody. And so, the kind of music for the people idea is what's driving us to. It drove us to the orphanages in Trinidad, disabled home, and continuing now and finding musicians on board, and then now trying to go into kind of correctional schools, and just trying to broaden what we can do in terms of where music goes for people, because I believe it's important. And it's definitely true that the prison system, I mean, I think worldwide needs reform. You know, in the Caribbean it needs reform. I mean, we have way too many men and women that have been, you know, that have been detained for years without even getting a hearing. You know, they've just been detained, you know, and charged with a crime, and they're in remand, and there's nothing going on. You know, there's too many instances like that. There are too many instances like that in the U.S., and there are too many falsely convicted or falsely arrested people in the U.S. And, you know, because of DNA testing now, you know, you're seeing a bunch of people getting exonerated. And it's a pressing issue because it's a generation of people, and it's, you know, it's a big part of the population when you think about it that is being kind of left out. And so you know, and they're people, you know, people see them as these, you know, people see them as whatever they want to see, but they need to be seen as people. And so yeah, the prison system definitely needs reform all over the world.
So Carnival is actually a time that brings together Caribbean people with lots of different skills. You mentioned Doctors Without Borders. We have Engineers Without Borders. You're speaking Musicians Without Borders. But all of those people actually meet up for Carnival celebrations. And you actually did something this year at Carnival, your first actual band in Trinidad Carnival, where you brought all of these different skill sets into your band.
Mm-hmm.
So could you sort of, one, talk about the band that you had, and then two, how do you harness all of that energy and skill set to address some of the things that you want to do?
Well, the band was called We the People, and the idea behind We the People was to kind of simplify it was to simplify the concept of a carnival band. And by simplify, I mean like go back to the lowest common denominator, which based on my research was music. To try to draw it back to live music and the exchange that happens because of live music in real time on the road. And so I've been studying vintage soca for like 15 years now, you know, learning these songs, transcribing them, learning the horn lines, understanding the science behind the arrangements. And I had never really had a chance in Trinidad to put that on a stage for the masses, and I wanted to do that because my parents, aunts, uncles, and so many friends of mine always talk about, you know, how it was on the road, and I was like, well, why is it that it was? Why can't that still be? And you look at, there were so few. There have been over the years. There's been a decline in the hiring of brass bands on the road for Carnival, which if you could see it as, you know, the carnival, people talk about the carnival industry growing, but I actually see the music industry in Carnival declining, almost dying. And by music, I mean live music, like musicians going to the tent, playing a fete, then playing on the road. That was a big industry. I mean, my teachers growing up, that was their bread and butter for the year. That's how they bought their car. That's how they made a down payment on their house. And so, but taking away the business side of it, We the People was really just about seeing what good live music does for people when they have the space on the road to play themselves, have fun, the fact that they knew the music. And from the time we announced it, I announced the band at the world premiere of the Carnival show. As soon as the show, right before the last tune, I announced the band. I had met with Peter Mitchell, who designed our costume, and I had already had David run on board from months before, and from then the buzz was high, and we did like an impromptu vintage soca jam session in the lobby after the concert, and then from there the buzz just grew. People were like, where do we sign up? And the band sold out really quickly, and the people who were in the band, you know, all walks of life, Trinidadians who live abroad, like people from all over the world really, who had a connection with Trinidad and Tobago from Carnival, were in the band. You know, Keith Rowley and his whole crew played in the band. It was like all kinds of people, and it was special to see simply because it reaffirmed a belief that music brings people together. And a lot of the people hadn't played mass in many, many years. Some people said they hadn't played mass in the century. Some people said the last time they played mass was before I was born. And it was also partly because, Carnival had, what I have seen in my few years coming back to Carnival, it's become this like over commercial, really over organized, where you have to register in June or July to get a spot in a band, to put on a shoestring, and that fits in a little box, and then, you have to wait, and then there's all these lines. It just became, for me, it seemed too kerfuffle, and I know that it turned a lot of people off. So when we came with this thing of come to the Mass Camp, it's a nice simple price. You get your jersey, come meet us on the road, Carnival Monday, we're gonna jam. And it was really, for me, the best part, the two best parts were just seeing everybody in costume waiting to play. And then when we started with Reno Rama going down Long Circular Road, just hearing everybody singing out, it was like this release, and that was for me the most powerful part of the whole experience was that release, just seeing everybody singing a song that they probably hadn't heard live in that context on the road for years. And if we think about our art, if you think of Carnival as an art that has music, dance, improvisation, theater, costume design, architecture, all of these different things all laid into one thing called Carnival, we have to make sure that we show all of the aspects of it throughout the history if we want it to stay alive. We need the roots of it. So we need the live music on the road. And so we're coming again next year. We're coming stronger. We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna play the good classic music, live, horns, vocals, and yeah, the response was tremendous, and we're really grateful, and we're gonna see them again.
And how do you harness the people to support some of these other things that you're interested in?
That happens through, in Carnival, on the Carnival Monday, you can't really talk. So it's not about, like going on the mic and talking about things. But a lot of the people that were in my Carnival band are people that come to my gigs, they come to my shows, they come to our concerts. And so normally in our concerts, I use, in between songs every now and then, not in between every song, but I use that time, to introduce the songs. And a lot of times the songs will be about something that will make you think about something else. So with the San Jose Suite, there was a heavy indigenous influence on the music. And so you got people thinking about the different indigenous peoples. And we had video footage. We had a big projector screen behind us showing images of the indigenous peoples, the Baruka people, the Moek Maloni people, the people like the Napuyo people of Trinidad. And so it got them thinking. So the same thing when we did the carnival show, it had all of the traditional, I hate the word traditional, but all of the performers of all of the different characters that we know. And so it just got people thinking about our history. And so it would be the same type of idea where you use the art just to cause a thought, cause a memory. And then from there, people will go and do their own homework.
So in funding in the U.S. is pretty big on interdisciplinary research right now. Which other disciplines do you work with, and do you do any work with any engineers?
I have not done any interdisciplinary work with engineers as yet, except for a couple meetings at the university with respect to cognitive research, with like linguists and physicists and musicians. But that's next on the list, really, because music is an art, but music is a science, and there's set sounds and set rhythms that are known to cause certain effects. Like, there's a saying that I think it's 136 beats per minute. If the song is at 136 beats per minute and somebody's dancing, they will not stop dancing. There are all these types of theories floating out there that I'm interested in, but also just being able to partner with a scientist that will have the interest of using science more like an art, to get people interested in what it's about. I'm a big Netflix. I'm always watching documentaries, and so using film is very important to me. So being able to use using the film to inform the music, and then probably using the film to maybe inform like some sort of science or some sort of history. I have worked with historians before, and of course choreographers, dancers, costume makers, all those types of things. So getting a scientist was probably the next step, like maybe an archaeologist geologist or, something, we'll see. Or an engineer, of course, environmental engineers. Well, I'm getting interested in environment simply because it's such an important topic that so many people are not really paying attention to yet. And I believe that music is a way to help shine light on it specifically. Like if you look at the fact that the Great Barrier Reef is either dying or dead by now. It's like the largest living organism. And I think the history of the world is the color is gone. And these are things that people really don't know about. So my plan is to all of my future projects that I do with respect to the research of specifically the indigenous peoples that I study. So like when I did the San Jose Suite, when I did the Carnival project, and my next project that I'm going to be digging into is a project called Gullah Roots, which is about the Gullah Geechee people of South Carolina and Georgia who have Afro-Caribbean roots. And a big part of the project is going to be how they were able to utilize the land and utilize the water and the organisms of the water to build industry, but not with abuse of the land. And so it's moving forward from here. My projects are always going to have that element to make sure that I study the elements of the earth that have a big effect on the people that make the music and make the cultures live. And so that's where my head is now. It's taking a little bit more research simply because it's a little less talked about subject. Like when I lived with the Barukas for a little bit, like a week, and spent time with them, I realized that they had basically been living the same way for hundreds of years, growing all of their own food, growing all their own crops, not overeating, not overdoing the protein, not overdoing the amount of meat that they consume. And so as a result, making sure that the land that they live in will continue to sustain them for centuries to come. And I think we could learn a lot from ancient civilizations about their mistakes and the things that they did to help kind of sustain the environment. There's so much that we don't know about Central America still, even though so many of the earliest fossils in the Americas are found there. And because, like, specifically Belize, because of there's so many different influences in that country. It's at the top of my list of places to go see specifically, and people to connect with musicians, specifically the Garifuna musicians, and just the story of how that whole people came to be and how they ended. And they started out just off the coast of Bequia, and ended up in the Bay Islands off the coast of Honduras, then to Honduras, and then up to Central America. It's up Central America. So it's very interesting to me, and the fact that they're so advanced in their conservation efforts means that I want to have a part to play in, even if I can't help them with their conservation, help to tell the story so that more people will be on board with conservation. If a small country like Belize can be so forward thinking, then they can help to inspire so many different places to do their part. And I think it's very important that we try to continue to restore coral reefs around the world. And for me being a Caribbean man, I think it's important that we start right here in the Caribbean and do our part, because forget about tourism, forget about attractions, forget about beauty, but it's just about thinking of the earth as a life and thinking about things like reefs as part of the earth and figuring out ways to save it. My name is Etienne Charles. I am trumpet player, composer, band leader, percussionist, associate professor of jazz trumpet at Michigan State University, Trinidad and Tobago, born and raised, living in the U.S.